Great everyone, a best full of goats here. Welcome back to the channel's 3rd year anniversary, where today we're going to kick things off where we began this channel, with a goat format guide. When I first began this channel, my first ever guide was on the deck I first topped the locals with in Zombies, and now we're going to take another trip back into my past to look at the modern version of the deck I played for around 3 years through my first into Yu-Gi-Oh! Competitive play, Monarchs. For those who don't know, 2016 was not the first time Monarch was a top tier deck. In fact, all the way back in 2005, the first ever Monarch deck topped in the hands of Evan Vargas. This was known as Soul Control. It was a glacially slow version of Monarch that used death slows to rip cards out of the player's hands while granting away their resources by using the deck's namesake card, Soul Exchange, to tribute their monsters, summon your own threats and remove your opponents. Sadly, however, as good as the deck was, it never saw consistent success in the actual GOAT format, the same way it would a couple of years post-GOAT, due to it lacking 2 things that were necessary to make it a tier 1 deck, that being 1, a consistent piece of tribute fodder, a la Treeborn Frog, and 2, a Monarch whose effect could be used at almost any point, a la Riser. And that was still pretty much the case upon GOAT's revival, as while modern deck building principles have yielded some changes to the old Soul Control variants, including putting more lights and darks in for chaos packages, the deck's underlying problems of bricking on either too many Monarchs, or too much tribute fodder, or drawing the wrong Monarch for the wrong situation still exist. And with decks like Chaos Turbo and Panda Burn becoming some of the game's best decks, along with every deck in GOAT getting a speed boost, the old variants of Monarch really don't cut it anymore and have pretty much fallen out of high level play. That was until GOAT format pioneer Aleph Yatu, one of the format's best players, figured out there were several broken yet underused cards in GOAT that synergise well with a small Monarch engine that could then be played alongside several GOAT's best cards, as we're looking at today. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Cold Wave Monarchs. An aggressive deck in the same vein as Chaos Return, this version of Monarch can play like your average GOAT deck, supplemented with a Monarch engine, in that it draws a bunch of cards, plays a lot of recruiters, and attempts to grind out the victory over a long time, but with a couple of extra now banned cards in it, it can also out of nowhere explode into a one-shot kill, while also doing what Monarchs are supposed to do. Yet this isn't your average Monarch, this is a Monarch that packs a game-winning one-shot punch, so let's take a look. Starting us off, let's look at the most important Monarch we play in this deck, my first ever ultimate in fact, Mobius the Frost Monarch. A 1 tribute monster with 2,400 attack points and 1,000 defense points, which become the Monarch stats. Mobius' unique ability upon being tribute summoned is essentially a better Twin Twister on legs, as he can pop 2 back row on summon. Now, I have previously said in my videos that this is one of the weaker Monarchs in GOAT, and it was more of a side deck card to play against trap based decks. This was due to the fact that when I made my Soul Control video, the vast majority of GOAT decks only set 1 or 2 back row at most, as most decks' trap lineups consist primarily of battle traps, and setting too many of those cards in a default full of heavy storms and giant trunades is a good way to get blown out. However, nowadays we're seeing decks more and more play chainable trap cards like Jar of Greed and cards like Raigeki Break, Phoenix Wing Windblast and Trapdoor Shoot, and with not being able to respond to back row destruction, players are much more likely to overextend and leave Mobius at least 2 nice cards to pop. But where I hear you say, if all the back row is chainable now, then surely anything we want to destroy will just get chained to Mobius, right? Well, that would be the case were it for this deck's other namesake card, Cold Wave. One of the strongest cards ever made, Cold Wave can only be activated at the start of main phase 1, much like Pot of Extravagance in modern Yu-Gi-Oh!, so you know it must be strong then. When activated, this card freezes all of the back row in place, preventing them from being used for the rest of the turn. So essentially what we have here is a card that will either force our Solemn Judgment right away, make your opponent use any of their bluffs like Jar of Greed, and essentially make any removal trap dead at an empty field, and they'll have no targets to use them on before the Cold Wave lock is in place. This not only means you can essentially an open board if you can OTK, but if not, it at minimum lets you get more value out of your Mobius by taking out multiple useful cards while your opponent's paralysed. This play was first used in 2008 in Gladiator Beast with Graze, the first historical use of Cold Wave, and bringing a very powerful play like this back to an older format is a great start in making Monarch decks more competitive in the faster method of GOAT today. Also, before moving on, I'd like to point out that there are other uses for Mobius outside of this that are really powerful even if we can't get max value from him. From removing Burn's stall cards and continuous cards to just being an MST on a big body. So please don't take anything I've said about him here or in past videos to mean that some of this card on his own is ever bad. It's not. Moving on. So Mobius is our main Monarch in this deck. However, while clearing monster removing back row is very important if you want to one-shot an opponent, it's also equally as important to remove monsters as well. So next up we're playing 2 copies of Zaborg the Thunder Monarch. A level 5 monster, Zaborg is not only the only Monarch to not share a level with his brothers, but upon summon he can pop any monster on the field. Now, like Mobius, this card can be used to clear the way for an OTK. However, unlike his frosty friend here, that's not his prime purpose in this deck, as his better Geki Break on Legs effect makes him the deck's best way of dealing with a big boss monster like BLS. There's not only a card we can barely beat in battle outside of the extra deck, but it's also a card that will absolutely destroy our game plan if he sticks around long enough. Finally, some Earth builds of this deck run a copy of 2 of Grand Mag the Rock Monarch. The Earth monster in the Royal family, Grand Mag, can on tribute summon, pop any set card, monster or back row, meaning that alongside Mobius he can easily be used with Cold Wave back row, and can also be useful in dealing with many monsters that Goat and Chaos decks like to play, like Gravekeeper's Spy, Magician and Faith. However, in addition to this, Grand Mag's additional value in Earth variants of Monarchs is the fact that he can additionally be an Earth target to banish the Gigantus after he leaves the field. This makes it easy to spam the ball with big monsters to provide that last bit of damage in the OTK late game, and when Gigantus' heavy storm effect upon being destroyed, it also gives us another combo with Cold Wave that can be even more damaging than Mobius given the right circumstances. Okay, so we've established that the Monarchs are a core part of this game plan in clearing the field. However, what we haven't discussed yet is how we're actually going to do lethal damage in one shot. Well, as you know, other than their powerful stats and effects, one thing Monarchs are known for is requiring a tribute summon, and then more than anything else, what we're going to take advantage of here, using the other rarely played banned card in this list, Last Will. A normal spell, Last Will was actually one of the first Yu-Gi-Oh cards ever made, having been printed in the Yu-Gi starter deck in the TCG, and its early design shows that it's absolutely broken. What it does is, when a monster hits the grave from the field in any way, you can summon any monster with 1500 or less attack from your deck. Yeah, I don't think I need to tell you that this card's been banned for over a decade at this point. Now, as I'll show in a bit, this deck has a toolbox of cards we can summon with this card, but most of the time we're getting one specific card here, and that's Cyber-stein, which is how we finish off our opponent very quickly. A level 2 machine, Cyber-stein has an infamous reputation in Yu-Gi-Oh! Being not just one of the first ever cards emergency banned, but also one of only a couple of cards to get banned in different decades of Yu-Gi-Oh! Which, if you know anything about this game's power creep, should be terrifying. This is because, for the cost of 5,000 life points, this card lets you summon any fusion monster from your extra deck. Yep, no limit to what you can summon, no restrictions on their effects, nothing. Just 5,000 life points and you've access to the entire toolbox of fusion monsters. Yeah, that's pretty terrifying. Again, I'll discuss all of our options later, but for now what we need to know is that Master of Oz is one of the cards we can summon with this card. And yes, I will admit this is the biggest downgrade from the 2006 version of this deck, which used Cyber Twin Dragon as its OTK piece, as unlike the 06 version, we don't have a guaranteed 8k of damage on an empty field, with just Stein, its summon and a Monarch. Still, it's not that difficult to do damage before you go for your full combo, and we also got some ways to put an extra body on the field, so Steining with the Monarch on board is still most of the time an OTK on an empty field. And that is the core cards that make up the Cold Wave Monarch strategy and make it the powerhouse that it is, with the rest of this deck being made up mostly of Goat staples that synergize with the Monarchs and this plan. First up we've got Sangan, whose ability to search a monster with 600 less attack points on death makes it a mini and slower Last Will of sorts, as when treated for a Monarch, it can't usually win the game on the same turn like Last Will can, but it can put a Stein in our hand for next turn. In addition to this, as we'll soon see, we've got several other great targets for this card, should our combo not work and we need a backup plan for a longer game. In addition to Sangan, the other search we run in this deck is Mystic Tomato, which on being destroyed by battle summons any level 4 or lower dark monster with 800 or less attack from the deck. So this is essentially another Last Will for Cyber-stein, but again, like Sangan, we can't win on the same turn we use this effect because we need to kill this thing in battle. In addition to this, however, this can also search a lot of our deck, including Sangan and a few of the cards we'll see soon in this list, because most of our best cards in this format are darks. In addition to this card is also helpful if we want to put a Chaos Engine into the deck, because it's more darks, we don't care about being banished from the graveyard. A good example of a card that we can search for Sangan that isn't Stein is Magician of Faith. As we're a more aggressive deck that can't really afford to pay life points outside of Stein, we're actually running only a few trap cards, and thus we've got a larger space for more spells, making this card much more useful. In addition to being able to get back the standard Goat options like the powerful draw spells, Delinquent Duo, and some removal cards, Faith can also bring back our combo pieces in Cold Wave and Last Will. Yes, one of the best parts about Stein Wave combo is that other than Stein himself in the late game, none of our pieces are bricks, and they can all serve a purpose outside of the combo. And with Faith we now have multiple switches off of Will when we tribute summon, and multiple free boards to attack onto thanks to repeated cold waves. Another one of our good Sangan targets in this deck is Gravekeeper's Spy. Now, as I'm planning to talk about Chaos Turbo soon on this channel, I'll cover this card in detail then, but all you need to know now is this card is a 2k defender that can get a second 2k defender from deck. This makes it very hard for aggressive decks to beat over us, and gives us a card that can last in the field a lot longer to be a tribute fodder for a Monarch. There's a reason this card has become one of the best cards in GOAT, and has kicked out several decks from the format. In addition to this, it also gives us more material for another card we'll talk about in a little bit. Up next in our monster lineup we run Kaiku with Ghost Destroyer, a big 4-star 1800 beta, Kaiku with both an Imperial Iron Wall for the opponent, and also double DD Crow whenever he inflicts battle damage, and all these attributes combine make him one of the GOAT's best anti-chaos cards, a deck we're building around defeating here. Now yes, with its bulk popping BLS already, and Master of All pissing over the entire deck in battle, our deck is already a decent match at 4 chaos, but there's no having to spin the scales further in our favour versus the game's best deck at the time. And in addition to this, Kaiku can also beat over most 4-star monsters in battle, making him an okay shoutout versus other beatdown decks like Warriors, so there's that as well. Up next, and proving that this deck is merely a Reaper format deck sent back to GOAT format, we run Spirit Reaper as another Sangan target. One of the best cards in both defensive and offensive states, Reaper on the defense is a wall that can be withstood in battle, making him a card that can be used for tribute fodder while also stalling up the game while we set up our combo pieces, while on the offense on an empty board, whenever he connects, he can take a card out of the opponent's hand, meaning that an opponent already losing to us is likely going to keep losing as we strip them of resources turn after turn while we build up our own plays. Overall, Reaper is one of the best cards in any kind of Monarch deck, and while he's kind of slow for our speedier combo, he does allow us to play games when we aren't comboing off very quickly, much more efficiently. Up next we run a small warrior package from Exiled Force, and MBT's declared best GOAT card in DD Warrior Lady. Now Warrior Lady is very simple, as when she attacks or is attacked into, she can banish herself and the other card, giving us another way to take out big bosses like BLS. However, Exile Force can do all of this on summon by popping itself another monster, while also triggering off Last Will as it's destroying itself to do this. And if you want to, you can even expand on this warrior engine with things like Reinforcement to the Army and a few other warrior techs like Zombite of the Dark. However, these two cards I think are mandatory in this deck because they're some of GOAT's best removals and our best ways outside of Monarchs to trigger Last Will. And finally, to wrap up this list, we have one Breaker, one Sinister Serpent, and one Triple Infect Virus to discard the Serpent, as ways of both playing monsters and back row and having a big beater in Breaker. And those, in my opinion, are the core cards for this version of the deck. However, keep this in mind, other than the Monarchs, Cyber-stein, Last Will, and Cold Wave, everything else in this deck is very negotiable. If you want, you could play a stronger Warrior engine, you could play an Earth engine with Grand Mag, or you could play a stronger Chaos engine with things like BLS if you wish. This is all entirely flexible and up to you, as the core point of this deck is you play a regular GOAT game that can OTK out of nowhere with a few Monarch cards and Cyber-stein. Before we finish talking about the monsters in this deck, I should go over the fusion cards we can summon with Cyber-stein that are Master of Oz. Yes, most of the time we do want to get Oz for our OTK strategy, but if that's not viable we do have other options because unlike Metamorphosis decks, we've got no level restrictions, only life point ones. So first off we have Thousand Eyes Restrict, as not only can this card lock down the entire field, it can also take one of the opponent's monsters into an equip, and then we tribute it off for a Monarch, giving us a 2-for-1 with Zaborg or a 3-for-1 with Mobius. In addition to this, Gatling Dragon is a good option against control decks so they can blow up multiple monsters, and Last Wave from Another Planet is a great option against more aggressive decks like Warriors that don't set very much, as while they can still set, they can't summon with this card on the field, meaning all they can do is summon their beaters in defense that can then run over turn after turn. In addition to this, all the cards in Legacy of Darkness have decent options, and they're probably a few of the ones I'm not thinking about right now. So overall with Stein, as well as an OTK, you've got an entire toolbox full of weapons you can use should the need arise. So moving on to the spells and trap cards, we're actually going to be very simple here, as other than the Last Will and Cold Waves, most of our list is fairly standard when it comes to back row. In fact, what's more interesting is what's not in this deck, as unlike other Monarch brews, we aren't running any soul exchanges or mind controls, and our only real control spell is Snatch Steal and 1 Brain Control. The reason for this being is, like I said, this isn't a fully focused Monarch deck as we're playing a lot of different engines, and we don't want to risk losing our battle phase with Soul Exchange, and we don't want to play too many Brain Controls because we don't want to lose life points before we can Cyber-stein. You can up this number if you wish, however just be warned that too many Brain Controls can make Stein a dead card in your hand. Outside of this, we're also still in the Trinity, of course, with Pot of Greed being the best one to get our combo pieces into our hand, Delinquent Duel being a good way to prevent our opponent from getting answers to our combo, but the most important in my opinion is Graze Charity, because 1 is to dig 3 cards deep, which can be really good when you need to find specific cards, but more importantly, you can also dump a card into the graveyard, so if we draw a Premature Burial or Call of the Haunted, we got something we can bring back when we combo off to pretty much guarantee that 8,000 points of damage. All these cards are still as good as they ever were in GUT format, but just keep in mind Graceful Charity will really help you out in a pinch, so be careful what you discard. Speaking of which, up next we have Premature Burial, a card that can bring back a monster from our graveyard for 800 life points. Now in this deck we just want to save this card for our OTK strategy, as with a Stein, Monarch and also on the board, pretty much anything we bring back from the graveyard with this card will make the AK OTK. However, if we decide to not go with the combo kill and play a more standard Monarch deck, this card's also pretty useful, as it can bring back Monarchs for additional beaters, or more tribute fodder to bring back Monarchs in our hand. The best use of this, for example, is to get Sangan from the graveyard with it, tribute that off for a Monarch, and leave an additional search off of the Sangan and the Monarch's effect, making this card a really useful 2-for-1. In addition to this, the card can also be used to bring back other big beaters, like if we're playing Chaos, it gives us a second bite of BLS, and overall the card is just a really powerful addition to the deck. Call the Haunted serves much the same purpose, by the way, in the trap section. Now, since we are an anti-chaos deck, Noble Mana Crossout is a must-have in this deck for dealing with powerful cards like Magician of Faith and Gravekeeper's Spy. And yes, Eagle Eye Viewer, we are playing those cards in our deck as well. However, while it isn't good to hit one of those cards and lose our monsters, there is a silver lining here. By removing 2-3 cards from our own deck with Noble Mana Crossout's barrage effect, we are reducing our deck size, making it more likely to drop and draw into our combo pieces or more draw spells to find our combo pieces. Again, ideally you want to have your own Spies and Faiths out of the deck before you use this card, but if you've got to use it early, it's not the end of the world because you are having your own game plan in some way. And to conclude our spell base, we have 2 more staples to talk about in 1 Book of Moon and Heavy Storm. Now, Heavy Storm is very self-explanatory. It's essentially a better Mobius that destroys all back row, so if your opponent's playing something like Burn and goes really all in on the back row, Cold Wave plus this can be devastating. However, Book of Moon is a really good Swiss Army knife in this deck, as it can both reset our faiths to recycle our massive spell lineup, or it can be used against very aggressive decks like Warrior to put their weak defense monsters face down, so if we haven't got a Monarch, we can still just run over them. Now, Book isn't as good as it used to be in the format with Spy Ring around more, but in this deck, it's really good against decks that can give us some trouble. Finally, let's quickly go over the few trap cards this deck runs, which shouldn't take long, as with the speed we try to win with this deck, we don't need much in terms of reactive cards or protection. First and most prominently, we run Trap Dust Shoot, a normal trap that can only be used when your opponent has at least 4 cards in hand. This busted card lets you look at the opponent's hand and shuffle 1 monster back into the deck. Honestly, I am genuinely shocked this card is allowed in GOAT format, and I'm not shocked at all that most decks these days are playing 3 of it, because this is essentially just confiscation for monsters. In fact, in some ways it's better, as by putting the card back in the deck, you're not giving Chaos decks more fuel to bring the big monsters out, and you're still reducing the opponent's hand size, giving them less options. In addition to this, because we're playing a one-shot OTK in this deck, this card acts like a Taxium Probe did in Magic the Gathering in the deck Death Shadow, aka you're seeing your opponent's hand and making sure there's no nasty surprises before you combo off. This card is insane in GOAT format. It's seen playing everything from aggro to control these days, and I can totally see why. Run 3 of this in almost any deck you play right now. Outside of Dust Shoot, the rest of our traps are classic GOAT staples, beginning with Ring of Destruction, a normal trap that destroys any monster on the field and then burns both players to that monster's attack points. Now, obviously this is pretty good removal. In addition to this, using this on Master of Oz after it's hit directly is a one-shot by itself, and I also use it on any of the monsters to finish off an opponent that's already at low life points. Mirror Force and Torrential Tribute are also played in this deck to wipe the field to make OTK more possible, and in Mirror Force's case it's also an excellent defender, while Torrential Tribute is really good at popping Sangans to get your combo going. Finally, Call the Haunted is played for the same reason as Premature Burial. So all pretty standard, however there's one aggro staple trap that we do not play in this deck, and that's Solemn Judgment, because it's about how great that card is. Paying half your life points before you Cyber-stein just gives you another brick in the deck. So sadly, as good as Solemn Judgment is, it's just not compatible with Cyber-stein, so let's reserve judgment in this deck, shall we? And no, I will not apologise for that pun, I don't care how bad it was. In conclusion, I would like to say thank you to all the GOAT format innovators that have made Monarch a viable threat in GOAT format. My nostalgia for Yu-Gi-Oh! In the early days comes from 06 to 08 when this deck just ran the game, so to be able to play a deck that's near that level of power pre-Treeborn Frog is so fun. Thank you again to all you people, and thank you all for watching. Stay tuned for next time. We're going to be looking into Invasion of Chaos. See you guys soon.